Hi everybody, I'm State Representative Gary Day from the 187th District in Lehigh and Berks counties, and welcome to my program today. I'm here to interview our Secretary of Agriculture from Pennsylvania. Secretary, welcome. I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. I just want to open up with a quick question. We're here at the Pennsylvania Farm Show. So could you give everybody who doesn't understand the magnitude of this show and the importance to Pennsylvania and agriculture, could you just tell them the importance of the Pennsylvania Farm Show?
Well, what amazes me is 100 years later, right? Our colleagues, Secretary Patton in 1916 began these conversations about we really ought to have a show as a marketplace for ag, and you think of our country at that time was nearly 50% farmers, and folks in agriculture, of course, is 2% today. But to have a show that really has lived true to that marketplace, which is what this farm show is, 100 years, it's absolutely amazing. 98% of our population, of course, non-farms, which even makes the point in a show even more important, right? To show what agriculture does every year.
Well, thank you very much for that explanation. The other thing I like, and the reason why I come out here every year is because there's many people in my district, family farms, larger farms, that come out to the show. They get to see all the equipment in part of the exhibition center. They get to show their animals, and I think I'm going to run like 6 questions at you at one time,
okay.
So I got to break them apart. But really, the farmers get a chance to come here and show their animals, show them off, sell a lot of their animals and different products that are made. Our granges sometimes are teaching the crafts of producing farming products, non-animal farming products. So can you tell us the impact a little bit that you've seen from farmers that get to come here and work within their industry? It's like an industry expo as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it impacts our farmers in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, at the very heart of this show is still a competitive show ring, right? I say it every day. If you really want to see the heart of this show and what has remained for 100 years, has been livestock in a competitive spirit, right, with all of our youth and our farmers putting their best genetics on display throughout the 8 days. Today is Dairy Day here at the farm show, so if you go next door here just a few feet away, you will see some of the finest livestock in Pennsylvania, and they are competitive. But that's the very heart of it. And then you have all of the other sort of core pieces of ag. You've got food processing, farm equipment. We're right next door here to somebody who's doing UAV and surveillance, aerial surveillance for conservation and crop protection. All of that is found here at the farm show. Very important.
Many people think about the Secretary of Agriculture and your department working with farmers, but there's other things you do as well. Let's talk a little bit about the value of farmland preservation. Lehigh and Berks County are always up there as one of the top, probably in the top 3 of the 67 counties in Pennsylvania in farmland preservation. Can you explain that partnership of how we purchase development rights and why that is beneficial to farming in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, very proud of the farmland preservation program in PA. You know, it's it started out of concern of loss of prime farmland, as you know, and over the 25 years, we're now leading the nation in the number of farms preserved, number of acres preserved. Lehigh and Berks counties have always been sort of the top of the list, the blue ribbons of farmland preservation. But it's there because of both the local support through townships and counties and the state, right? So our resources through the program are combined with local resources to really, and ultimately I'm always reminded by the farm families who make a contribution to that as well, right? So that sort of team of funders, if you will, come together to purchase the development right, retain those farms in private ownership, but they won't be developed. And they carry a deed restriction that says that farm will remain in a productive agricultural state in perpetuity. That is a long time. So the families who step up do that, and very grateful that they do. But we continue to invest. I mean, this even in a challenging budget season as we're in, still funding for farmland preservation. funding from the federal sources and state. Very proud of it, though. It's got a lot of potential, and a lot of farms still on the waiting list.
Right. Well, and I appreciate that. And I keep piling on too many questions for you at once because I have so much to talk about and share with our viewers. But two of the other things that are important to people in our area are other things outside of direct farming that the agriculture does. One of them is our clinics to test animals, as well as let's talk about a little bit about our vet school and put those two together about the value and how we put funding toward that, and what is the value to agriculture across Pennsylvania with those two things.
Yeah, so Pennsylvania is unique because we have a vet school. There are only 14 of them in the country. And we have one of them here in Pennsylvania, and great school, University of Pennsylvania Veterinary Medical School, which far outlives, I guess you'd say, the farm show. So it's over 100 years old. But we have a Penn State University, which is our land-grant university, and of course our Department of Agriculture. It's the only system in the country that links the vet school with our land grant to our testing lab here in Pennsylvania. Each of us have a lab, so it's a tripartite arrangement. And the samples then are triaged around those three different labs. But they can sort of know real time what's coming in each of those labs. So really feel like that is an amazing model. Grew out of the high-path AI problem we had in the 1980s and realized that there wasn't surge capacity, there wasn't redundancy in testing capacity, and we were really stressed, industry was stressed. So you have a model today that's governed by an animal health commission, which is also unique to our government here in Pennsylvania.
So what I like about what you just said, that network between the Penn State, our vet school, the clinic here in Harrisburg, that neat network that we have put together, working together, protects our animal livestock across Pennsylvania. So if there is a problem with any type of disease, we're right there, we're right on it. The clinic, I know you have a mobile clinic as well, right? And you go out there and or people bring animals here. You can check, diagnose quickly, and get solutions out there quickly before we have a catastrophic event where it could really devastate that part of agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a critical point because to respond, you need to know what your baseline is, right? Do you have a problem? Are you seeing a spike in a particular virus or disease or something? The only way you know that is having good historical records and having good baseline sort of testing. So, as an example, our poultry industry in Pennsylvania, which has been challenged over the last year with high-path avian influenza, and we've held meetings together and have talked about that to our poultry producers. But those poultry producers are testing every month. So they know what their sort of normal is. So if they see a spike, they're going to have a good idea that something's abnormal. It may not be high-path AI, but they're going to know there's a problem. And that's the real beauty of the system. It's not simply in response to a problem. It's that everyday testing to give you comfort to know that is there a problem? Are we seeing a trend? Does a particular producer have a problem or an industry have a problem? All of that is monitored through our Animal Health Commission.
And I think that's a great point. I was talking about the response that the state does, but also the regular checking. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't when I was asking the question, and that's the system that protects Pennsylvanians and really our entire agricultural industry that we talked about. One other thing that I think about, and it's happening right now in Berks County, another safety net out there. A lot of people don't understand why we have this spotted lanternfly in Berks County. So invasive insect is detected in Pennsylvania. We have a system that detects that, whether it's Penn State or other ways that it gets reported. But that gets reported, it gets tested, these insects get identified. And then can you explain for the people, I think a lot of people who are out there, maybe a mechanic who doesn't think about agriculture every day and is doing his job or her job, they're out there and they think, what's the big deal? So a different fly with a lot of colors came in. Can you explain to them really why is it important to identify an invasive species, and what can be the impact if we don't put things in place with people? Don't transport firewood, and all the other things that we put into place to try to contain this. So what is the problem with something like this spotted lanternfly, and what do we do about it?
Yeah. So it's a great point. So we have been once again, Pennsylvania is sort of at the epicenter of another invasive pest. First time in North America, in Pennsylvania, in your district. So there's no normal about how to control this. There's no plan to really eradicate it. So we're developing that real time with U.S. Department of Agriculture, Penn State Cooperative Extension, both Berks and Lehigh counties, as well as the Department of Agriculture. The issue is, and I say to everybody, you may not think it's a problem until you go in your backyard and you see that your favorite tree is now dying. And there's nothing you're going to do about it. You're going to cut it down, right? Or some of the other shrubs. It has the potential in fruit crops, right? Apples, peaches, all of that, to do as much damage. And when you look at what's happened in South Korea, where we believe it originated, or China, it's devastating because it kills the plant. So, and it's indiscriminate in terms of what it attacks. We're really concerned because we have no control plan. We don't have anything. USDA has never experienced the spotted lanternfly before, so we're learning as we're going. And just want to say thanks to your sort of constituents there, because we've had to go places and do things that folks are not sure what the pest is, what's the control, and I think we all share the concern of what's the outcome. We don't know yet.
Well, and the reason why I bring it up is because I agree with you. My district is so, a lot of times they're teaching me about some of these things that I think I'm trying to get the word out, and I learn from people in my district. I have a very high IQ in my district of things like this, problems like this, but we have a turnover all the time. People are getting older, younger people are coming up, so I try to put the word out about why is it important. If you introduce an insect into an ecosystem that doesn't have a predator that takes care of that, or a life cycle that takes care of that, then we could end up with too many of them feeding on the things like you said, our fruit trees, and even your favorite tree in your backyard. That's an important thing because I do get those calls as well.
Folks, I mean, I've watched them and been in conversations where when you tell somebody they've got to take their favorite shade tree down, which is part of the landscape, and all of that kind of stuff, not a pleasant discussion. But this pest is inflicting that on those plants. So our challenge is, of course, to get our arms around the spotted lanternfly. We've done heavy surveillance this past year, making sure that there's an awareness, but there's also control and commerce. So each of these areas, the other piece is there's a quarantine. And the quarantine's the most burdensome because now you can't move in or out, product in or out, without having an approval to do so. In having managed quarantines, they're not easily done. They have a tendency to irritate people, right? But it's in control of an invasive pest.
And I just want to make a comment of support for any of the things that we're putting into place. And many of the people in my district are understanding, but some people still come at it. It's the first experience with government that they get stopped and can't move a load of firewood or something like that without an approval. And it seems really radical and cramping liberty and things like that. But when you really look at the overall, it's the community coming together. And I think I want to make sure people understand that the way I always look at any of these restrictions is our department and other people, Penn State and other people, the community of agriculture comes together and says what's reasonable. And I know, I've been in these meetings, that these people do think about the restrictions they're putting on people and try to balance between protecting the community by eradicating this pest or controlling the pest versus infringing upon people's rights. So I'm always grateful the people in my district who do work with our Department of Agriculture or Penn State or any other people. All of us get together usually and try to get the message out. So I'm appreciative of that. Mr. Secretary, we have to talk about the budget. It's out there. We haven't been there. We were supposed to pass a budget between the legislature and the governor back in June. It's almost 7 months now. We did put a budget out there right at the end of December, and the governor allowed some funding to go through. He used his line item veto to stop some of that funding that was there. And I really don't want to put the secretary on the hook right here for the budget negotiations. I don't think that's fair. I also don't want to speak for the governor, but the question out there from farmers in my district is really, hey, you guys approved this funding, you all agree on it, and the governor line items certain things. Some of these things were the things we're talking about. So the first question I have to ask you is, do you feel comfortable that we're protected today, maybe a month from now, and then finally, when is that time where things are going to start to be that funding is not there to do some of these things that we talked about?
Yeah, I appreciate the question and agree that you can't get in and out of a conversation here at Farm Show. I haven't been able to, and certainly just helping your constituents sort of understand the dynamics here a bit. So our in the budget that was passed, the governor in his line item veto took out some lines within the Department of Agriculture. The important line is the top line, which is our general government that supports food safety, animal health, and the plant industry. So the core function of the department is fine. Okay, I think we're fine. We have a special appropriation for the high path avian influenza that we were taking out of restricted funds, so that is also fine. Our challenge, quite frankly, is with Penn State University and Cooperative Extension, as well as the vet school. They were both lines the legislature supported, governor supported them, ended up vetoing them here in the recent budget action. And that, to me, is sort of like the worry spot, because that gets every county in Pennsylvania. It has the potential to disrupt the service of both education and research and the diagnostic work at Penn State, and potentially the diagnostic work at the University of Pennsylvania. So I put that on my worry list, okay? I've had conversations in recent days with both the dean of the vet school and the dean of Penn State University. They will tell you that they're okay for the moment, but they've got to start making decisions now about hiring. Where do they sort of position resources here in the spring, which is a peak meeting season for Penn State Cooperative Extension, of course. So if I were to put sort of a watch list and really worry list, it'd be those two items. There are other things in our budget that are legislatively supported. We support them. But when you start making your critical list, and that's where we are at the moment, I'd look at that Penn State University line and Cooperative Extension and University of Pennsylvania Vet School.
I appreciate that, and like I said, these are not easy questions. It's a tough time for all of us in the legislature as well, and we're trying to work through this. I want to ask you a question about to give people an insight. When my farmers want to know, people in agriculture, people who understand the value of agriculture want to know, what does the secretary do with the governor? Give them a window into your relationship. You're appointed by the governor. You work for the governor. Everybody understands what that means. That means you're working toward his team and what they're trying to do. And I've worked in an administrative position where I worked for a mayor. So it doesn't compromise what you think is right or anything like that. You're trying to give him the best, and now I'm answering the question for you. You're trying to give him the best advice you can, but can you tell the viewers a little bit about how does that go when the governor says, listen, because of the overall budget negotiation, I need to line item certain things, and some of them are going to be, and they were in other departments as well, but when he says that to you, is there a give and take as far as what you just said about the general services line item versus other places? If you're going to do it here. Can you give, I don't know what the answer is, but would you give the viewers a window into how does that work between the secretary and the governor to protect agriculture?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, right? And having watched it over time with different governors' administrations, it's been interesting the level of engagement with a cabinet member and a governor and his senior team. I have to tell you, in this, with Governor Wolf, I think it goes back to my initial conversation with him, because I had this great exchange with him saying, what do you know about agriculture? I mean, what do you want to do with agriculture? And he was very honest. He had spent years in the Peace Corps looking at new varieties of rice in India. And it sort of underscored for me that he understood the science, he understood technology, he understood the power of food to change communities and lives. So it's on that basis that the conversations that have been ensued have been good. The first governor who picked up the phone after my budget hearing called and said, I appreciate what you just said. Thanks for representing my budget. We've had great conversations about the Chesapeake Bay since, specific to this budget action. Budget office called and said, this is where we are. I said, I get it. However, there are a couple of things that I just want to point out. One, we've got a farm show coming.
Right.
All right? And we're just on the cusp of that. So we need support for that. Two is we've got some hiring decisions within the general government that I need for the Animal Health Commission, or the Animal Health Bureau, and food safety. They were approved. And I said to him, to the Secretary of Budget very clearly, that understand when you take out cooperative extension and research and vet school, that you're touching the very center of animal agriculture here in Pennsylvania. And you've got to be prepared then to have the conversations that will follow about, are we protected? So just as you've asked the question today, Representative, that was the exchange I had with him. I did make a special request to keep the Pennsylvania preferred line there because it was proposed. We've got a farm show, we're getting all of these farmers markets, we're trying to brand Pennsylvania. I didn't think it was fair in our commitment to the industry who are partners with PA Preferred, industry partners, they sign up to be members, that it was fair to them to put their product, our label on their product, and then take it out, right? So that was a special request. But the exchange has been cordial, but it's been very pointed, because I think what he wants from me is to say, how does it work? I mean, what's going to be the ramification of this decision? So I provided that.
Well, I thank you very much. And you know what, like I said, I've been in these positions before on the administrative side, the legislative side. They're not easy questions. And you've always put yourself out there with me. You've come out into my district. We're going to have a farmers night where we've expanded it, and we invite other stakeholders from the community to come and watch the discussion between our secretary and our farmers, and maybe even ask questions. So there'll be other people in the room this year, as far as like elected officials. Many elected officials have decisions of zoning between their farms on the outskirts of their community and their towns where a lot of voters live, people live. And I just want to thank you for your time here today. I want to thank you. We're in a tough spot budget-wise. We talked about that a little bit. I'm fighting in Harrisburg. Some of the things didn't make sense to me because we all agree on them, but I do understand the overall overreaching budget discussion that's going on. I'm involved in that on the Appropriations Committee as well, and working hard to keep that funding for those important programs that you talked about. I appreciate the partnership that we've had years ago and now again in these couple years. And I just want to thank you for being here today, walking through here. It's a tough time to be out here, and the Secretary doesn't shirk away from that, and I appreciate that, and I think Pennsylvanians do as well. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to wrap up our interview today. Is there anything that you want the people to know about agriculture or PA Preferred or anything? I just want to give you the opportunity.
I would just say we are very honored in the department to host the show, but really appreciate the investments our citizens have made in agriculture over the years, particularly a farm show, which is a state-sanctioned show, right? It says a lot about what we value in Pennsylvania here with the farm show. And just want to thank you personally for the support over the years and engagement, very, very constructive thought about how do you solve some of these really important issues of our time, right? One of them being agriculture and food. You do that well, so thank you very much.
We're here at the mushroom display at the Pennsylvania Farm Show, and with me is Chris Alonso, third-generation mushroom farmer. I wanted to get out some information about mushroom farmer. Can you explain the process of mushroom farming?
Sure. So Pennsylvania grows 2/3 of all the mushrooms in the United States. This is the beginning process. This is hay, straw, and horse manure and chicken manure blended together. That's the food for the mushroom. And then over here, we actually put on a layer of peat moss where the mushrooms will start to fruit up from the peat moss using the water from the peat moss. And then finally over here, the mushrooms begin to pop out and everything's hand harvested.
All right, so tell me a little bit about What do we see up here? Explain what's up here.
So there's about a dozen varieties of mushrooms that are actually cultivated that have been originally found in the wild. We got pom-pom mushrooms, maitake, king oyster, and the gray oyster mushrooms. These are all the exotics that we can actually grow indoors.
Chris, tell us a little bit about mushroom farming in Pennsylvania. Agriculture is a big part of the economy. Tell us a little bit about mushroom farming. How much? What's the dollar amount of mushroom farming? Tell us a little bit about your operation. But what's important about mushroom farming as an industry?
Well, we grow over 600 million pounds of mushrooms in the state of Pennsylvania. It's about a $3 billion impact to the economy, providing over 10,000 jobs. If you stretch tractor trailers from one end of the state to the other, that's 1 year's supply of mushrooms in the state.
Chris, that's a great explanation of what it means to Pennsylvania. I want to thank you for being here with us today. Mushroom farming in Pennsylvania is alive and well. Who would have thought what it takes to be a mushroom farmer, what it takes to raise mushrooms? It's happening right here in Pennsylvania. By growing close to home, we keep prices down for our food. And I'm very grateful for Chris for being here today and explaining this process to us. With me today is Bev Gruber. Bev is here and plays an important part in the Pennsylvania Farm Show. We're in front of the grain display. Bev, can you tell us a little bit about this grain display?
Sure. This grain display I saw at the South Carolina State Fair and decided we had to have something like this that really showed off grain and corn. So we had a harvester silo for our main thing, as you can see, and then we put these up and then the grain, and we've had an awful lot of people looking at them.
When you come out to the Pennsylvania Farm Show, this is what you get to see. We read about it, we talk to kids about it. Bring your kids out here, let them see things for themselves. This is a great display where you can actually take probably 3 or 4 classes of grains going through, and it's displayed in one display, and you see here all the different types of grains that people can look at. Corn is down here, different kinds of corn, different types of grain. When you come to the Pennsylvania Farm Show, you see many, many different displays just like this. Tell us a little bit more about grains and why we want to put it out there, information about it.
Okay, up at the top we have soybeans, and soybeans, there's an awful lot of soybeans and corn grown in Pennsylvania. We also have wheat and oats here. We have rye on one of the other uprights. And it just shows you how important the grain industry and the corn industry is to the ag economy in Pennsylvania.
You know, as we develop, we realize that you need different types of proteins into your diet. Grain is a base of all of our diets, and I really appreciate your time here. Pennsylvania Farm Show shows off the different food products that farmers produce in Pennsylvania, and I want to thank Bev for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for coming to visit.
I'm State Representative Gary Day, and if you have any issues, not just agriculture related, contact my office and we'll be able to get back in touch with you with answers or give you the answer right away. And I want to take this time to thank the Secretary again and remind everybody that the Pennsylvania Farm Show is one of the best shows in the country. If you are close enough nearby, come on down. Come see the farm show every year. It's always in the beginning of January. Look for it every year, and I put out emails to let you know when it is. It's a great place to be, whether you're a farmer or not a farmer, to just see everything that's going on in agriculture all under one big roof. So thank you very much for watching.